Many of you don't know me or my story, and I understand that. You see, I was born during a time when people like me, black men and women, boys and girls, didn't get to speak up or write about their lives. But me, I knew I was different. I knew that I was born into this world to help my people find their voice and their freedom. My name is Mary Prince. Here is my story. As I pen these words, the chains of slavery are breaking. My story begins in Bermuda, a world of beauty and pain. I was born at Brackish Pond in Bermuda, on a farm belonging to Mr. Charles Miners. My mother was a household slave, and my father, whose name was Prince, was a sawyer belonging to Mr. Trimmingham, a shipbuilder at Crow Lane. I was brought along with my mother by old Captain Darrell and given to his grandchild, little Miss Betsy Williams. I was made quite a pet of by Miss Betsy and loved her very much. She used to lead me about by the hand and call me her little nigger. This was the happiest period of my life, for I was too young to understand rightly my condition as a slave, and too thoughtless and full of spirits to look forward to the days of toil and sorrow. I had scarcely reached my 12th year when my mistress became too poor to keep so many of us at home, and she hired me out to Mrs. Pruden, a lady who lived about 5 miles off, in the adjoining parish. At this time, Mrs. Williams died. I ran away directly to my poor mistress's house, but reached it only in time to see the corpse carried out. Oh, that was a day of sorrow, a heavy day. All the slaves cried. I was then sent back to Mr. Williams to be sold. I cannot bear to think of that day. It is too much. We followed my mother to the marketplace, where she placed us in a row against a large house, with our backs to the wall and our arms folded across our breasts. At length the vendue master, who was to offer us for sale like sheep or cattle, arrived and asked my mother which was the eldest. She said nothing but pointed to me. He took me by the hand and led me out into the middle of the street, and turning me slowly round, exposed me to the view of those who attended the vendue. I was soon surrounded by strange men, who examined and handled me in the same manner that a butcher would a calf or a lamb he was about to purchase, and who talked about my shape and size in like words, as if I could no more understand their meaning than the dumb beasts. I was then put up to sale. I then saw my sisters led forth and sold to different owners, so that we had not the sad satisfaction of being partners in bondage. It was a sad parting. One went one way, one another, and our poor mammy went home with nothing. My new master was a Captain I, who lived at Spanish Point. I was forced instantly to take up my old occupation of a nurse. I could not bear to look at my mistress. Her countenance was so stern. The person I took the most notice of that night was a French black called Hetty, but she led a most miserable life, and her death was hastened by the dreadful chastisement she received from my master during her pregnancy. One of the cows had dragged the rope away from the stake to which Hetty had fastened it, and got loose. My master flew into a terrible passion and ordered the poor creature to be stripped quite naked, notwithstanding her pregnancy, and to be tied up to a tree in the yard. He then flogged her as hard as he could lick, both with the whip and cowskin, till she was all over streaming with blood. Her shrieks were terrible. The consequence was that poor Hetty was brought to bed before her time, and was delivered after severe labor of a dead child. Ere long her body and limbs swelled to a great size, and she lay on a mat in the kitchen, till the water burst out of her body and she died. For 5 years after this I remained in his house, and almost daily received the same harsh treatment. At length he put me on board a sloop, and to my great joy sent me away to Turk's Island. My new master was one of the owners or holders of the salt ponds. I was immediately sent to work in the salt water with the rest of the slaves. I was given a half barrel and a shovel and had to stand up to my knees in the water from 4 o'clock in the morning till 9, the sun flaming upon our heads like fire and raising salt blisters in those parts which were not completely covered. Our feet and legs, from standing in the salt water for so many hours, soon became full of dreadful boils, which eat down in some cases to the very bone, afflicting the sufferers with great torment. Though we worked from morning till night, there was no satisfying Mr. D. Nothing could touch his hard heart, neither sighs nor tears nor prayers nor streaming blood. He was deaf to our cries and careless of our sufferings. I think it was about 10 years I had worked in the salt ponds at Turk's Island when my master left off business and retired to a house he had in Bermuda. Here I worked in the grounds. I had more than enough to do, but still it was not so very bad as Turk's Island. I heard that Mr. John Wood was going to Antigua. I felt a great wish to go there, and I went to Mr. D and asked him to let me go in Mr. Wood's service. Mrs. Wood found that I could work, and she wanted to buy me. But I soon fell ill of the rheumatism and grew so very lame that I was forced to walk with a stick. No one cared much to come near me. I had to lie in a little old outhouse that was swarming with bugs and other vermin, which tormented me greatly. It was a long time before I got well enough to work in the house. Sometime after I began to attend the Moravian church, I met with Daniel James, an honest, hard-working, decent black man and a widower. We were joined in marriage about Christmas 1826 in the Moravian chapel. We could not be married in the English church. English marriage is not allowed to slaves, and no free man can marry a slave woman. Mrs. Wood was more vexed about my marriage than her husband. She could not forgive me for getting married, but stirred up Mr. Wood to flog me dreadfully with the horsewhip. She said that she would not have nigger men about the yards and premises. I asked my master and mistress to let me buy my own freedom. Mrs. Wood was very angry. She grew quite outrageous. She called me a black devil and asked me who had put freedom into my head. To be free is very sweet, I said, but she took good care to keep me a slave. About this time my master and mistress were going to England, and they took me with them to take care of the child. My husband was willing for me to come away, for he had heard that my master would free me, and I also hoped this might prove true, but it was all a false report. When we drew near to England, the rheumatism seized all my limbs worse than ever, and my body was dreadfully swelled. I showed my flesh to my mistress, but she took no great notice of it. In the West Indies we wash with cold water, in England with hot. I told my mistress I was afraid that putting my hands first into the hot water and then into the cold would increase the pain in my limbs. I was obliged to wash, though I was very ill. I knew that I was free in England, but I did not know where to go or how to get my living, and therefore, I did not like to leave the house. A woman of the name of Hill told me of the Anti-Slavery Society and went with me to their office to inquire if they could do anything to get me my freedom and send me back to the West Indies. The gentleman of the society took me to a lawyer who examined very strictly into my case, but told me that the laws of England could do nothing to make me free in Antigua. Since I have been here, I have often wondered how English people can go out into the West Indies and act in such a beastly manner. They tie up slaves like hogs, and yet they come home and say, and make some good people believe, that slaves don't want to get out of slavery, but they put a cloak about the truth. It is not so. All slaves want to be free. I have been a slave myself. I know what slaves feel. The man that says slaves be quite happy in slavery, that they don't want to be free, that man is either ignorant or a lying person. They will have work, 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 night and day, sick or well, till we are quite done up, and we must not speak up nor look amiss, however much we be abused. This is slavery. I tell it to let English people know the truth, and I hope they will never leave off to pray God and call loud to the great King of England, till all the poor blacks be given free, and slavery done up forevermore. My name is Mary Prince. This is my story.